The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and welcome to our CorelDRAW Graphics Suite webinar, Color Management with David Milisock. David is considered the consummate expert in color management with CorelDRAW and is the author of 2 books on the subject. My name is Ariz Ganji, Product Marketing Manager for CorelDRAW Graphics Suite, and I'll be moderating the session as well as handling questions and logistics. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website for future viewing. To ask a question, please use the GoToWebinar console on the right hand of your screen. Simply select the third panel from the bottom of the console and click the plus sign to reveal the questions window. Then click in the questions field. We'll answer as many questions as possible at the end and then post additional answers to the web in a few days' time. So without further delay, here's David.
Hello and welcome to the Color Management webinar. I'm assuming that everyone is hearing me okay. I want to remind people right up front that Corel is going to be at the SGIA show in New Orleans from October 19th to the 21st. So grab your tickets and get on down. I will be moving rather quickly. The themes for our webinar are pretty much the same that was in the CorelDRAW X5 book, which changed CorelDRAW from an application-based color management program to a document colored managed program, meaning previously to X5, your files being brought into CorelDRAW had to be in the same color space, or you had to change the application's color space to match the imported files. After X4, X5 became document color managed, means that there are application color management settings, but you can open a document or open several documents all in their own color space and view them and edit them correctly. So what we need to do is understand the terms use, convert, and assign and use them properly, and color management is going to really work for you. It's basically a set once and utilize type of technology inside a graphic application. And what I mean by that is when you open up a file, it has an embedded profile. If you want to see it the way that it belongs, you need to use the embedded profile. If you're bringing an element into your document to use, say you're bringing a photograph in to a file that you want to use, then you need to convert that to your document's color space. If you're bringing in an element that is uncolor managed, then you need to assign that your document's color space. If you see a serious color shift, then there's other things that you may need to do. You may want to open that element, like in Corel Photo Paint, experiment with assigning different color spaces to it until you get a proper view that you think is proper. Then assign the profile, and then bring it back into CorelDRAW, and then either use or convert. But that's the 3 main questions that you get and the 3 main answers that you have to provide for yourself in color management in CorelDRAW. And what we want to do is we want to work on the interface. The interface for CorelDRAW is very, very simple. The tools menu, color management default settings, these are your application settings. And you'll see here I have CGT, press, sheet fed, coded. These are my custom settings. You'll see that you can save and rename settings as you need. You can choose North American General Purpose, and you can see here that the sRGB, the web-coded, these items here are no longer checked. These are default settings that come with CorelDRAW X5, and this is the one that comes, at least in the North American package, that is set by default. And you'll see that you have North American, you have European, you have Japanese. There are minimal color management settings for those who are specifically having issues with laser engraving. There are simulate color management off and simulate CorelDRAW X4 settings. The reality is this. Previously to CorelDRAW X5, X4 and older versions, Corel itself had some issues with being totally ICC compliant, and it allowed the user to do some things that were non-ICC compliant, And with X5, that's no longer possible. So the reality is, even though you may choose to simulate CorelDRAW X4, there are certain features that are just no longer possible in X5 because you're being constrained to the rules of ICC color compliance. And that brings CorelDRAW X5 into the mainstream professional level color management. The default settings, we'll talk about these right here a little bit. The RGB is sRGB, standard RGB. You're going to find that as the competitor's default RGB color space also. If you go to North American prepress, you're going to see that RGB changes to Adobe RGB. That is a standard RGB that is used in the printing industry. Let's go back to the North American general purpose. You'll see the U.S. web code at the dot gain of 20%, primary color mode, a CMYK, rendering intent, Colorimetric, color engine, Microsoft ICM. What I want to talk about is what these actually mean. What this means is when you have your sRGB set for your RGB elements that you create in CorelDRAW are actually only going to view and print correctly or be edited correctly in other applications that actually see and the embedded profile and work in the sRGB color space. The reason that is RGB color spaces of varying sizes, and you'll see here when I select them, you'll go down here, you'll see Pro Photo here. RGB color spaces, red, green, and blue, have the same number of steps from the lightest to the darkest color. So a larger color space has no more changes from light to dark than a smaller color space. So RGB 125 all the way across the board is a neutral medium gray, but a different neutral medium gray in each RGB color space, which is why it's absolutely important to embed your color profile. You may be sending across RGB 125 and think I got a nice gray, but if you didn't embed your profile, it comes over to me and I'm using a different RGB color space. I'm going to see a neutral gray, but it's going to be lighter or darker. And so that's why it's important to embed your profiles. The CMYK is exactly the same issue. It will assign the color space that you need. CMYK color spaces have what's called a TIC, total ink color. What happens is you can only have so much ink on paper, so when you create a CMYK profile, it limits the ink. There's an ink limit that's built into each CMYK profile, and the one for web coded swap is going to be less than it would be for my typical, which is a light GCR 360. The total ink limit of that is 360. The CMYK limits added together would be 360% out of a possible 400. I use that for high quality sheet fed printing, but it also exemplifies why embedding the color profile is, really required. The primary color mode, you'll see your choices here are RGB and CMYK. This is incredibly important setting. It depends on what your workflow is. For press print, CMYK mode will change the rendering of your transparent effects to CMYK. On RGB, it'll be RGB rendering effects for your transparent effects. The other aspect, and Corel's very intuitive like with this, where the competitor is not. When you select RGB for your document, you're going to find that your RGB palettes are what's predominantly going to display when you go to use to fill colors in your objects. If you choose CMYK, you're going to see your CMYK palettes are predominant. Now we also have below here your relative colorimetric rendering, okay, which is default. I particularly think this one is an error, and to understand that, let's go back to my PDF here a little bit and pick up this page. This is in the book, and I try to mention it. It's on page 21 of the book. Understanding the parameter of the definitions of color spaces is an exercise in linguistic futility. You'll tell people 100 times the definition and they don't understand it. Relative colorimetric, when you're converting from an RGB color space to a CMYK color space, or from a CMYK color space to another CMYK color space, has the same definition. Colors from the source document that have exact equals in the destination document will not be changed. Colors that are outside of the destination document's color space will be clipped or modified. And the three circles that you see here, I tried to give a layman's definition and a layman's understanding. The first circle we have here represents an RGB color space that's rather large. The second circle represents that RGB color space converted to a CMYK color space using straight relative colorimetric. While we see the inner area that represents destination space that is equal to our source space is unchanged, we see space that are outside, and it just gets clipped horribly, terribly, and it really changes the color. Where you can get into this issue, I got into it many times in shooting product shots where we were using subtle hues of green in children's storage bins. What happened was when they were converted, all the green bins looked the same. So that got to be a serious issue. That can also be a serious issue with using only the sRGB color space. However, when you convert using perceptual, true, colors that are in gamut for the source space in the destination space also get changed. As we can see here, the perception of the color is the same. This circle, while looking definitely smaller, it looks much more similar. It's perception, and that's the definition of perceptual rendering. The perceptual rendering seeks to maintain the relationships between all the colors. So the circle on the far right looks more similar to the one on the far left, while in reality, exact measurements of color will be different. Color is an art and not a science, and it is a science as well as an art. So while technically it's incorrect, visually it is correct, and that's the problem we get into. We are in a visual business, and that's why I use perceptual rendering, and the competitor has changed their method of handling this issue by using a non-ICC compliant process. They use relative colorimetric with something called black point compensation. And what happens is really essentially you're using relative colorimetric rendering, but you're really getting a perceptual result in the end. This is done primarily, not talking to them, I can't judge why they've done it. I can tell you the end result is that it provides pretty much a perceptual rendering, and it resolves an issue with the K of CMYK being printed to non-Postscript devices. So in the book, which is available on the Corel website, you can buy the book itself. I think it also comes in bundled packages. You can read this, and I definitely say this is not scientific, and I don't want it to be for scientists. I want it to be for artists so they understand why. So that's why I always choose perceptual rendering. Okay. Now the color engine aspect here is one of choice. You're going to see that the first choice that pops up, I believe you'll find that with CorelDRAW X5 Service Pack 2 and Service Pack 3 LCM, The LCMS color engine is available. I believe this was done by Corel in a service pack to provide Type 4 profile support for Windows XP. If you're running Windows XP, I highly suggest to you that you consider going to Windows 7. I'm running several machines myself that are running Windows Vista, and I'm not having any real issues. The machine I'm working on right now is a Windows 7 Pro Ultimate 64-bit with, I believe I get 8, maybe 12 gig of RAM, I don't remember. But the color engine for LCMS was added to give the Type 4 profile support in XP, because XP does not support Type 4 profiles. The Microsoft ICM is Microsoft Color Engine, and XP, the available color engine, is 2.2. It was originally a Lino color engine. The Vista and Windows 7 variant will be ICM 3, and then Microsoft WCS is the other option you have. My only recommendations here depends on your workflow. I tend to output everything that I do. I really rarely have real issues with working with people in Adobe. If I do, generally they're not nearly as knowledgeable as I am. You'll find them, if I had $1, well, I probably do have $1 for every time I found somebody working in Photoshop proofing a CMYK color that didn't even know, because the proofing configuration in PS is so confusing. Most people don't even know how they're viewing their images. I stick with the WCS. I really like the conversions. It works very, very well. But if you're really sensitive, CorelDRAW X5 does support the Adobe color management module. You can download it and install it. It is not ACE. ACE is what ships. You will have to go in and modify manually the black point compensation. The problem with ACE and the problem with Adobe CMM is that it uses black point compensation with the screen, and you can do nothing about it. We'll move on here to Preserve Pure Black. This is a selection that was here that is a concession to those who are in laser engraving. It will preserve the pure black of K, of CMYK. I choose not to use this method. I use a different palette, which I will demonstrate here in a little bit. And then the key to my method is the default setting of map gray to CMYK black. That actually makes the palette that I use work in non-Postscript devices. The preserve pure black issue is that if you're not using a lot of photographs, you're probably okay with it, but it can severely distort the black transition of photographs. So that's why I highly recommend not to use it and have come up with an alternative. The spot color definitions, I do a lot of work where I'm outputting to inkjets, to digital presses, and the options you have are lab values, RGB values, and CMYK values. There's merit to all of them. The X4 and older always use RGB. The new Pantone specification are to use lab values. This is supported by CorelDRAW X5, but is not supported by the competitor. They're still using RGB values, and in fact, they're not even using the newer tables. You would have to download those. So be aware of that if you have cross-application issues. I use lab values. They are much more accurate and a very, very good choice, especially for those who may be designing in spot colors and then outputting wide or grand format posters. Let's get over here to the color management policies. You're going to see the default for open is use the embedded profile. That's a perfect choice, an absolute perfect choice. I use warn on color profile mismatch checked because I want to make the choice. If there's a color profile mismatch, it'll tell me what color space it's in, what my document is in, and then I can choose whether I want to let the application do it itself or whether I want to do it manually. And that's simply a user preference, but that's what these boxes do. Import and paste, I think Corel has done a very compatible set of default settings. An RGB is going to convert to the document profile, which is perfect. In CMYK, it's going to assign the document color profile. Now, the interesting aspect of when you assign a profile to a file is that the color numbers do not change, whether they're RGB or whether they're CMYK. So a CMYK object being brought into CorelDRAW by default will not have its color numbers changed. However, the display may change. If it's not the same as yours, it may change. But the numbers, when you go to output, will output identically. Okay? And with grayscale, it's going to convert. It treats grayscale like it does RGB, and it'll convert to the document profile, which I believe is also the right choice. And then again, we have the warn on color profile mismatch for, and then the warn for missing color profile. In practice, when you start checking these boxes like you see that I do, it's best if you have a color managed display. I use a color managed display. I use Greytalk Macbeth Profile Maker Pro and an i1 Pro to calibrate my display. The interesting aspect of this new application in X5 is, unlike X4, it automatically reads the display custom profile from the operating system. In X4, even though it was loaded in the operating system, whether it's XP, whether it's Vista, or whether it's Windows 7, CorelDRAW had to be told to go and see the display, or it would not read the display. And there was tons of rumors out there about, well, it's going to double profile. There is no such thing as double profiling. Okay, you assign it in X4 and then you see it in X5. You do not need to do this, and it's a vast improvement. Now, for those of you, I do not have time to cover this. It could be its own webinar itself, but the process of utilizing profiles inside Window is covered inside the book. But like I say, it could be a webinar in itself, so I will not get into it. The book does have it covered. And with XP, it was rather simple. The profile loaded into it. But with Vista and with Windows 7, it's a little more complicated. The color management is much more capable in the operating system, so it takes a little knowledge. This covers the application interface as far as the application is concerned. Now, the application interface will dictate what color profiles that you convert to when an object is brought into CorelDRAW or PhotoPaint and converted to lab. Certain limitation in CorelDRAW is once it's in the lab space, it can only convert back to the application CMYK, grayscale, or RGB. The other aspect of the limitation is, I just rebuilt this, so we have to take a look. Okay. You'll see here ScanJet 3970 ICC. I have a ScanJet scanner. When you're scanning a file into CorelDRAW PhotoPaint, you must set the RGB to match the scanner custom profile if you have a scanner custom profile. If not, CorelDRAW will assume and assign your application default RGB color space. If your scanner is your general basic models, they're all designed to work in sRGB. You can assign or convert. However, if it's unassigned, Corel won't know what it is. So I always set my RGB when I'm scanning to the scanner custom profile. And then what you can do by clicking here, you can save it as and you can save that as a default setting. As you can see, I can go back here. I have one for the web that I built. It uses my CMYK, so my CMYK is converted to RGB. The interesting aspect of creation for web would be a lot of people want to work in RGB for web. That's true, however, but if you have your brochure that you created, it's all in CMYK, well, you can't work in RGB and then convert to CMYK and get good conversion. However, you can work in CMYK and in spot color and get reasonable conversion to sRGB for the web. So you actually want to take your CMYK and spot color elements, convert them to sRGB in the file, and save a web version. But as you can see here, I now have the scanner 3970 available, and I can select that. Now, the other aspect that we were talking about for CorelDRAW was document color management, and that's a huge step. CorelDRAW X4 could show you one document at one time and do it correctly. If you were not soft proofing, you could show the RGB color space that CorelDRAW worked in and the CMYK color space, and then the grayscale was just fixed, and you couldn't, it would only work in the one color space. You see here I use a custom space. I click my new palette, and you'll see here that CorelDRAW has some defaults, but it will actually come up and read the application defaults and then default to that. Let's say I wanted to make this something different. I could use sRGB, my perceptual, and then I could actually save it for, and then that could become my default for at least a selection. I could choose several defaults. But that is document color management. Now what that means is when I open up a document, you'll see that up here my document color space is sRGB, CMYK, light profile. Anytime I bring an element into CorelDRAW that doesn't match that, mine will, let's just see if I can find something here. What's CorelDRAW is telling me is I have a missing profile. Now I happen to know that I took this picture with my web camera, or actually with my phone camera, which all phone cameras are calibrated for sRGB, so it's telling me it's missing. So what it's going to do, it's going to assign this RGB color space. It reads the document color space, and that's your first choice. Now you can assign it other spaces, but any other color space is going to give a color shift. That's what document color management means. CorelDRAW, if you do not use the soft proofing Docker, which we're going to talk about here next, will allow you to properly view your document RGB, your document CMYK, and your document grayscale simultaneously on the page. This is my workflow. I do not use soft proofing because I work a tremendous amount in what's called native color, which was something that CorelDRAW started supporting in X3 and X4. CorelDRAW supported native color only in its published, Corel published PDF. And what that means is you could create a document that had grayscale, RGB, CMYK elements in, and spot color elements in, and you could export that to PDF and then allow the conversion to the media profile in inkjets and digital printers, and you got much more brilliant, much more true spot colors. And what was nice is you could have your RGB elements convert nice, and your CMYK and spot color corporate identities convert correctly. Like I say, in X3 and X4, CorelDRAW supported that only in CorelDRAW exported PDF. CorelDRAW X5 now supports that full-featured in PS, EPS, PDF, and as well as distiller published PDF. So that's a huge, huge gain and advantage over the competition in wide grand format and digital output. And digital output is the future. Presses, I'm not saying presses are going to disappear, they aren't, but runs are becoming shorter. and turnaround times quicker, and people want more brilliant and more accurate colors. And Corel's been there since X3, where the competition is not, and we are now at X5 and still leading the pack in terms of real productive color. In the Windows Dockers, you'll see color proof settings. That's another Docker that we have over here. Let's see if I can import something again. And let's just make that a little smaller. This happens to be a live project. That is a stucco wall that we will be placing a vinyl printed sign onto. I use it for mocking up, but it's a wonderful concept. Did you see it change? Look over here, proof colors. When I click the proof colors, now watch the picture change. What CorelDRAW is attempting to do is it's attempting to show us what this picture would print like if I was using this color profile to this device. And that's what soft proofing is about. We can export a soft proof. You can choose your profiles here. There's something called gamut warning, which, to be honest with you, I cannot. There's slightly out of gamut colors. Let's speak about this a little bit. I am not a proponent of out of gamut warnings. I've never seen one that works. The explanation as to why they don't work is a little detailed, so I'm going to go over it quickly. Colors and color gamut are based on a 3D relationship. For a computer to model color, they have to put it into a space, a 3D space, 3 dimensions, X, Y, and Z coordinates. So colors that are in or out of gamut, it's based on an X, Y, Z coordinate factor. The unfortunate aspect of every color gamut from every application I've ever seen is they base on density and not spatial coordinates. The issue you get, let me just see if I can find something here that will actually, it will actually produce an incorrect color gamut. Here we go. As you can see here, CorelDRAW is telling me that this document is Adobe RGB, that I'm working in sRGB, and it's asking me to convert. This is proper. I've told it to do this. The application is doing exactly what I told it, and it allows me to make the choice. So I say, okay. This is a picture of a friend of mine, and as you can see, I'm the cute one on the right with the pink tie, and as you can see, the bright green is showing up on the dark areas. However, what I want you to pay attention to is how my blue shirt is really also shifting color. What that means is the blue shirt that's shifting color is also out of gamut. If it wasn't out of gamut, it wouldn't have shifted color. However, the highlighted color here for the out of gamut alarm is not popping up on the blue shirt. So the out of gamut alarm is basing its description and its display on ink density, which I went through about 20 hours of examining different images, and that's what it's doing. So I don't use it. You can if you feel that you have value in it, but I do not use it because of that. I prefer simply, to get rid of the out of gamut alarm and just use it like this. The display in CorelDRAW is second to none. It is excellent, particularly in PhotoPaint for print. PhotoPaint has an incredibly sharp display, incredibly good color if you have a calibrated system, and it will detect and show a moire that will show up on print much faster than any other application out there. But the exports for soft proof, you can see here, PDF, CPT, JPEG. Soft proofing is almost all done as PDF now, except for large and grand format over 200 inches. There's a very interesting limit the competition has. Their one program has a 207-inch limit, and their other program has a 200-inch limit. CorelDRAW has a 150-foot limit. So if you're really in the sign business, you really need to be in CorelDRAW. But when you click export, you'll see color. You can use the color proof settings, and it's shown the same that we have here. So if you have RGB elements, it's going to convert to that color proof setting. And that's what needs to be done. If you want to use just a document color settings, it'll do that also. And you can output colors as then RGB, CMYK, or native. But once you use the use color proof setting, it locks you into whatever you have in the color proof Docker. Okay? And of course you have all the settings, but we're really only focusing on the color tabs here. And I want to move along quickly because I'm running out of time. And then the print proof is going to do the very same thing. As you can see here, I have an Adobe PDF as my default printer. This workstation is my muscle and my power, and it's where I do all my big stuff. I've done maps on here that were 110 inches by 65 inches, had 115 transparency lenses on it, and this thing just ate it up like it was nothing. But you can see in your color, again, you get the very same options. Use color proof settings, print composite. You get your rendering intents. I always use perceptual. This, of course, is your choice. But that's what the color proof Docker does. There are some people who just really believe that the color proof, soft proofing is the way to go. It's not my personal preference, but I understand the workflow, and this is how the dialogues work. It's just the color proof settings in CorelDRAW are second to none. There are none out there that are any better. The issue that the real difference and the real problem for some issues are this right here. And you'll see that I have, it's a Docker that's used for grayscale. If you're working in non-Postscript devices, and I have one here, which I will, the problem you have is as you can see, as we zoom in, these two display rather innocuously. Okay. This is K of CMYK, and this is a grayscale 100% palette that I created. When you see the display, if you're looking real close and you have a color managed system, you will see a slight change. You will see they are slightly different. However, when you print these to a non-Postscript device, you will see a significant difference. I almost always work only in Postscript environment, and even the display has an issue. The non-Postscript device will print the black of CMYK as a dark gray. When you go to laser engraving, this can be an issue because it's not going to create a dense black. What I've done to resolve this, rather than using this feature here, I've created a custom palette, which will drag over. And basically what I've done is I've created a grayscale palette based on grayscale that matches CMYK. That's why my black matched the K black. On the display it matches, and in print it will actually print a solid black, and you don't have to use the map grayscale, so, or map pure black. The advantage to this method of working is when you're working in RGB output devices and you're forced to bring people's work in or to create files that require to use CMYK elements, you can use this black palette for the text, for vector graphics, and then not get a grayscale output with PCL devices. The only shortcoming to this is if you then output native color PDF or PostScript files, you're going to get a dense black out of it to PostScript devices. If you print standard CMYK output, you'll get a proper output, because I've left Corel do this, map gray to CMYK black. So no matter what the percentage of my gray, Corel will map this to a CMYK workflow as the proper percentage, which I have this, is going to give me a 35% black. Like I say, the only disadvantage is in native color workflows you'll get a dense black. However, that's a very slim and minuscule issue, because native color output is always going to digital devices anyway, and registration is not an issue, in most circumstances people will like a real nice dense black. We have come to the end of covering all of the CorelDRAW color interfaces. So if you guys would like to pop me a few questions, it looks like we may be starting to run a little long. I'd like to take some questions and get some answers if I can. Thank you.
All right, so if you have any questions for David, please feel free to send them along in the questions panel. David, if you open that up, you can review all of the questions that we've got in there, which we've received quite a few. It's been a really wonderful webinar that way. So, David, as soon as you're ready, you can review some of the questions in there.
Okay, let me go to the top here. Let me see if I can expand this a little bit. With new X5, what settings aside of Pantone could you recommend for screen printers and half-tone designs? Depending on what part of the world you're in, the questions got some other questions that I need to know, so I'm going to try to give you a very general answer. Color management settings are regional. In Europe, they use Euroscale. In Japan, it's Japan. In North America, it's North America. I go with as really great choices for most people. The nice part about those is if you're using files from other applications, CorelDRAW's defaults are exactly what the other guys are, right out of the box. Right out of the box. The only things I would suggest that might be different is matching up color engines. If you're getting a lot of files from the other guys, their choices of color engines are going to be theirs, color engine, or Microsoft, and you may want to do that as your default. Download the CMM or use Microsoft. But right out of the box, they're right where you need to be. And I'm speaking from a North American perspective. I've not loaded CorelDRAW in Europe, so I do not know how it loads there. But if you're in Europe, you're probably going to want to pick the European defaults. Let me go down here and see if I can. Why RGB 125, 128 is midpoint, therefore neutral. Neutral in RGB simply means a balance. I use the RGB 125 as a random number. If you use RGB 10, 10, 10, it's a neutral light gray. If you use RGB 200, 200, 200, it's a neutral darker gray. The neutrality comes from all three channels being set identically. That's what neutral means. And in the real world, people were astonished to understand that I say when I do a lot of presentations, there is no such thing as color. It's all gray. When you have a color profile correct, and it will produce gray correct, it will produce all the colors correctly, because all elements are made up, all color elements are made up of gray, elements of gray. Gray is equal amounts of RGB, so something that's green simply has less red, less blue. That's all. So where else am I? With these profiles, is X5 capable of creating halftones for printing without RIP software and an Epson printer? Yeah, creating halftones is a matter of, I mean, I'm assuming by what you mean by creating a halftone is converting an RGB file to a CMYK. It's just a matter of selecting the one that you like. I use the light GCR 360 because I really like its transition through the grayscale, the lighter ends of gray. CorelDRAW is as capable, if not more capable, than any application in the world of creating, and I don't mean good, I mean state of the art, second to none. It's your ability. You know, and there, you know, the only thing holding you back is you. If you want to go to the top of the world, you've got the tool you need. Let me go down here. There is no best CMYK. CMYK needs to be discussed in terms of TIC, which is your total ink coverage. Okay, sheet-fed presses for high-end coded work have a different TIC. The unfortunate aspect, and I don't want to sound insulting to printers, but however, when you go in to a print shop and you look at them and you ask them what the TIC of their press is for their 100-pound coated cover stock, they will look at you with a face that almost reminds you that you just started speaking Klingon. They don't understand it. But the TIC is it. I pick a CMYK profile based on my destination. Cover stock or heavy text on a sheet fed coated is always your highest. I use a TIC 360. Corel shipped 1 is the generic 5, then they had a generic 4, which is a TIC 280. No, I'm sorry, TIC 300, which is absolutely wonderful Kodak profiles. And what I mean by that is they transition through the gray component replacement. And what I mean by that is they use CMY as gray as deeply into the black as they possibly could before channeling in black. And what it meant is that you really need to have a better pressman, but you really got good transitions. You would see it in black slacks. You would actually really see it in people of color. People of color are far more difficult to reproduce because they have color. So there is no best one. There is one for like a coated sheet fed. There's one for a coated web press. There's one for uncoated sheet fed. There's one for uncoated web. And personally, I don't like any of the swap profiles. I prefer the old profiles that shipped with Corel. There's some Kodak profiles, and what I've just decided to do since I'm getting this question is I will make them available within 48 hours on my website, www.graphictechnology.com. You go there, you'll be able to download a whole bunch of really nice color profiles, and basically what you do is create there and then allow that when you print to an inkjet, it will convert to the media profile. If you're going to go printing to a printing press, select like a coated sheet-fed one for sheet-fed work, and uncoated for an uncoated sheet-fed, and vice versa for web press. Let's go down here and check on the next one. Settings when you're printing to a Xerox IGEN. There is no setting. use anything you want. The Xerox IGEN is a ICC color managed device. You can just use a native color PDF export, and it's going to convert your file to the media profile. Now, with that said, you may run into circumstances where your output provider doesn't know what they're doing, and that is very, very prominent today, unfortunately. Let me scroll down here a little bit. I'm seeing another question here. Hey, Adrian, I see you're in here. Cool. What is the difference between GCR and the default US web code? What do you use again for monitor, adjustment, and calibration? Okay. To answer your question, you would have to actually open up the profile in a profile editor, which I have, and it will actually display. For those of you who don't understand what the question was, GCR stands for Gray Component Replacement. And what that means is gray is CMY, and what they do is, a lot of times to save ink is they'll reduce the amount of CMY in the curve and add black into it. They'll use less ink and it's more cost effective. However, it tends to harden the look and give you less control on press. To tell you what's the difference, I would actually have to look at them and then post different screen captures of different things. If you're there, John, tell these guys to send these questions into you, and what I'll do is I will actually pull these up in my profile editor. I'll send these captures out, and then we can post them on my website and or on the CorelDRAW website so that they can actually take a look at these different curves. Okay?
Yes, absolutely. We're collecting all the questions now, and we'll be able to respond to any we don't get to in the webinar afterwards via email. So if we don't manage to get to your question here today, don't worry. We'll do our best to answer it within the next coming days.
For the laser engraving, what should the map gray to CMYK blocks be? I would leave it checked. I would leave it checked. And another thing I'll do is I will post that custom palette that I made on my website, and I'll send it up to John so it can be on the Corel website. That is an XML palette for X5. And you guys can give that a try on your laser engravers and see how that works for you. I'd be really interested in seeing your results. I do not do any laser engraving, but I do some work with PCL devices. I think that's going to solve a lot of your problems. You can leave the map pure black off, use this palette, and I think it's going to really do something nice for you. Well, yes, if you do need to have a grayscale photo, but there's a very interesting site. John, this is another question that we need to have recorded, because there's a really good guy down in Texas in the United States that does tremendous work with CorelDRAW, and we need to point our people to this resource. And I think that's something that we could do as a nice service. Actually, I believe that they are using some RGB grayscale for laser engraving.
Okay. We'll follow up with you on that, David. Thanks.
Okay. I want to print photorealistic T-shirts with plastisol inks. I've been trying with TSteps, but it's confusing. I'm not sure what TSteps is. All I know is that I don't know what TSteps is. If that's a document garment printer, we're not having any issues here. You may find that you work better with RGB, depending on the driver configuration. Let me give this word of advice that I've run into over the years when the Corel users are buying devices with your die sub printers. You buy something that says it comes with this RIP, but it's really not a RIP. A RIP is a PostScript device. It is not a non-PostScript device. And the problems you get into is they buy the die sub, and then now someone comes in and they got to do Pepsi Blue or Coca-Cola Red, or they have to do AT&T Blue. and they find out that they can't do it now because the rip they have is really not a rip. If you need to deal with color critical output, you're going to need to match a corporate identity, okay? While you're buying your device right up front, I know it looks like it's more expensive to buy the PostScript rip. What I've been finding happening is people will buy the device without the PostScript rip, and when they go to upgrade it, the rip is now 4 times more expensive to add on than it would have been if they'd have bought it right in advance. So if color is critical to you, look at getting in the PostScript environment. And you should not be having any problems. The gentleman, I'm assuming it's a gentleman, I don't want to be insulting, Israel Gomez. What you should do is go on the Corel public forum, identify yourself, ping me, I'm on there daily, and let's get a dialogue going. Let's work out this problem. It'd be a lot of fun. So I look forward to the opportunity to help you. Let's go down here to the next one. How do you make that gray tone palette you have? What is it that when I set stuff to press, I know it should be CMYK, I get a better true color if don't convert to C RGB when I send the file. The problem you're having, Ted, first of all, let's answer first one. How do I make that gray? Well, you're not going to have to. I'm going to make it available on my website. I'm sure that John will probably make something available, and you know, it's an XML file, and you can just take it in. I think that what it is David is the user here, and we go over here, and I think, is it my documents? And then my palettes. You just drop it in there and Corel will be able to see it. You can see here it's black for mixed RGB workflows.xml. I will make that available to you guys since you've been so nice to come in and listen to me flap my jaws for so long. Why is it that when I send stuff to press, I know it should be CMYK, I get a better true colors? Okay, if you're sending it to press, let's define the term press. Is it a real printing press, a dry offset, wet offset, or are we talking a digital press? If it's the former, meaning it's a real offset press, okay, this shouldn't be happening. I suspect that what you're sending out may be getting run digitally. So that could be your answer. If you, like again, if you go on a public forum, post this stuff, tell them you're at the, this post there, you're on the webinar, I can give you some questions that you can ask your printer to make sure you know how they're really outputting your stuff. Okay, has the printing industry accepts RGB to give you what you see is what you get? They do in digital. They don't in sheet-fed press or web press. So the rule of thumb is if you're sending out for an actual printing press, you still should be working in the CMYK environment. The reality is the communication between the printer and the designer is extremely poor, and in many cases just because the printer doesn't know. I go in and I watch at print shops, I watch them make plays, and I ask them their process. The guy says, I don't know, I'm just told to click these buttons. And that's unfortunately the state of printing in the United States today. Okay, let's see if did I get through all the questions? It looks like I may have gotten through all the questions. Are there any other questions?
Yep, so we'd like to thank everyone for attending today, as well as David for hosting the webinar. Thank you so much for attending. And just a couple quick reminders. So you can find David's book on our eStore, which the link has been posted in the chat. And just another quick reminder that CorelDRAW will be at SGIA in New Orleans from October 19th to the 21st. Come check out our booth. It's number 1958. And you can, David won't be there, but we will have a couple other representatives willing to help you there with all your CorelDRAW questions and provide you with any tips or tutorials you need to really enhance your design. So we'd like to thank everyone for attending, and we hope you have a great day. Take care. Thanks, David.
You bet. I'm logging off.
See you later.
Take care.